Excuse me, everybody. Just as everybody's coming back to their table and some people will still be finishing their lunch, thought we'd just keep going. Quite a lot to get through still in the last hour or so. Kia ora tātou, my name is Prue Halstead. I'm the CEO of Invest South, which is a local investment fund with a sole shareholder, Community Trust South. We invest in local businesses looking for growth capital. Our remit, actually, our mandate covers not only Southland but Fiordland and Queenstown. We cover a very wide investment remit from one of my investee companies here, from seed stage right through to more mature businesses like the Fiordland Lobster out of Te Anau. So it's my very great pleasure to talk to you today in what is always the worst session straight after lunch, so thanks for that, Mike. We wanted to spice it up a little bit and talk about some of the really key industries that are starting to develop in this region. We've heard a lot about the new developments around hydrogen, around aquaculture, but there's quite a lot happening here already, and really keen to catalyse some of the excitement that's coming out of some of these businesses who are going to talk to you today. I want this to be as interactive as possible, so I expect lots of questions from the audience, not from me, but for three of these panellists, and I've also encouraged them to ask questions of each other. We have, because Mr. Anthony Jones provided us a presentation at the last minute, the other two hurriedly did the same thing. So there is a very short presentation, but they will be on very strict timers. And the buzzer will go off, and if they're in between a word, we're to clap and move them on. So key message from this expo, it's been a fantastic 1.5 days, but the key message for me has been the importance of getting things done and getting things done quickly and just getting on with it. And the three people to my right are amazing examples of that within our region, and I think are to be celebrated, and as I said, hopefully catalysts for other businesses who might look to how they might use decarbonisation as an opportunity for growth as opposed to a threat to business models, which is the key thesis that we've worked these questions around. So I'm just going to introduce each of them quickly, then they'll come up and very quickly give their brief introductions, and then I've got a series of questions that we'll work towards. So first we've got Anthony Jones, who's the CEO of H.W. Richardson Group, a large Southland-based transport company with operations across New Zealand and Australia. You'll notice from Anthony's accent that he's actually from Australia, but is very happy to be living here and cycling the length and breadth of New Zealand in the next few years, obviously, with his latest escapades in the Westpac chopper ride. He moved here in 2021, but prior to joining HWA, Anthony was the CEO of Link's Cargo Care Group, an Australian logistics infrastructure and solutions giant that operates across the transport industry and employs more than 3,300 people on both sides of the Tasman. He's got an impressive view of a number of different business streams, which I think bring not only to transport, but bring a lot of interest to some of these other things we're going to be discussing today. With Southland as a key export and logistics hub, Anthony is keen to lend his expertise to the business community. We're going to take him up on that, to propel the region on a path of growth and sustainability. He did note that he's been struck by the innovation and entrepreneurialism encompassed by Southlanders, and from small to large businesses, he believes every business is an important link in the chain of a region's economic resilience. Music to my ears, and really keen to hear a little bit more about that. Karina Young is CEO of Yunka Group, which a number of people will know as a heating provider through the fabulous Yunka fires that grace so many of our homes, but also the CEO of Enpot Limited, which is a revolutionary technology that enables aluminium smelters to offer deep modulation to increase the uptake of renewable energies. Full disclaimer, Invest South is an investor in Enpot alongside Yunka Group and Auckland Uni Services, and so really excited to follow this journey. Karina has a background in law and commerce, studying at University of Otago. She is a Southland girl, although she lives in Raglan at the moment, so that's a little bit of an interesting juggle. And she has worked in finance, production, engineering and manufacturing. She is on the executive team for the New Zealand Home Heating Association, and one of the key things that I always tell about Karina is the three words that she used to describe the growth of a business and when it can and cannot flourish, and that's team, timing and technology, and those are three things I think she'll be able to talk about today. David Simpson, a number of you will know, he wears so many different hats. It's a struggle to get him to pin one, which is why he's got on him, which is why today he's talking about Carbon Group and T4 Group. But T4 in particular is a company which was established in 2021 with the vision of providing regional New Zealand with access to co-location data centres and reliable, secure, green and economically viable data network solutions. That's a really exciting initiative for this region. We've talked about two data centres starting up in recent years, and hoping that Dave can give you a little bit of an update about where they've got to. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass over to Anthony to give a first... Oh, is it Janka first? Okay, sorry, Karina. I'll get killed for that later. And we'll do questions after.
Yeah, sure, this one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prue. So, hi everybody, I'm Karina Young, CE of Janka Group, so I'll start with Janka to start with. Engineering manufacturing company, family owned. We've got a small company based here in Southland, a couple of small factories in Dunedin and then a bigger one over in India. So 45 years ago, lovely story, totally irrelevant to today's conversation, lovely story. 45 years ago, we were living in a 100-year-old home. I wasn't, this predates me. We were cold. I wasn't, my family was. Newborn baby, my sister. So Terry, my father, went outside and fabricated a lovely wood burner, put it inside his house. His mate came in and said, "My goodness, that is an amazing fire. Hey, what you should do is you should go to the local A&P show." So he rightly did so. And over 3 days, he had sales of 150 units. They all paid cash up front, and he said, "I'm in trouble. I can make one a week." So that's 3 years, and at that point he started investing and getting some great team, and that was 45 years ago. Okay, sorry. So predominantly known as manufacturing. However, another great story, when I was 7 years old, my dad picked me up from ballet. And on the way home, interesting story, because why would you say this to a 7-year-old? He sat there and said to me, "Ooh, manufacturing in New Zealand, I just don't know what it looks like. We're going to have to start to diversify. We're going to start to pivot, and I think we're going to get into production engineering with the smelter." So I don't know what the interesting bit there is, either the pivot or the fact that I used to be a ballerina, not sure. Okay, so in regards to the manufacturing, that's where the company started, and yes, we make wood burners. About 30 years ago, so in the 90s, there was a huge amount of downward pressure on us to make those wood burners increase the efficiency and heavily reduce those emissions. Whilst it's not rocket science, there's still a lot that goes into manufacturing wood burners. And this country now has some of the cleanest wood burners in the world today. So not why we're here, but an interesting part to see of how little companies do great things. Okay, sorry, we'll move through to the engineering piece. So we went in and we started being production engineers for NZAS, and that's a relationship that we hold extreme value with. We've had it for 35 years. Aluminium smelters are big, intelligent beasts, and they require great aluminium heads to run them. And that is exactly what you've got. And we have 35 years of relationships with the NZAS team, the wider Rio team, and so that's something we're very, very proud of. We all talk about, the potential of NZAS not being there long term. We talk about the direct impact on direct employment, and then we also talk about the indirect. We don't often sit there and talk about that huge loss of opportunity for a company like Janka that we have had over those 35 years. Yes, we are key suppliers to NZAS, but through the wider Rio group, we have been able to secure multiple contracts internationally. Which leads me on to the next opportunity. Auckland University, Light Metals Research Centre, preeminent aluminium research centre in the world. Every single conference you go to talking about aluminium, someone is there talking about how they got their PhD at Auckland University, how they get consulting from Auckland University. It is the one to watch. It always has been, especially under the guidance of Dr. Mark Taylor. So they came to us 2012, said, we've got this great technology we're working on. We know that you are key production engineers to NZAS. Would you like to work with us and develop this work? So absolutely, we said yes. And we've been working with them on the commercialisation of what was previously called the shell heat exchangers, which we've commercialised into the MPOT technology. So our technology is patented. It also has additional filings out to 4042. The key takeaway here is that we will always be looking to manufacture the critical components for the world's smelters here in Invercargill. And that is all segued through that lovely relationship with our friends down the road at NZAS. So, very high level. I know I've got some interesting, some people in the room that know this is very high level. How does MPOT work? So aluminium is made in giant industrial sized pots. Pot temperature must stay strictly between 950 and 970 degrees at all times. Any changes in energy can compromise the critical heat balance that is required to make aluminium. So the MPOT shell heat exchanger attaches to the side walls of the pots to regulate that temperature. It enables pots to survive and even thrive with changes in amperage. So the MPOT technology can allow a smelter to dial up to 30% depending on plant capabilities. It can enable a smelter to dial down 30%. What that means is it can give back that power back into the grid, 20% within a minute. The remaining 10% may take a month to capture back. So an aluminium smelter dials back production, frees up energy for the grid. It enables the grid to pick up a greater share of renewable energy. So it enables smelters to operate flexibly, providing energy on demand, ultimately turning smelters into giant virtual batteries. Again, enabling the grid to uptake a greater share of renewable energy. We have got a commercial scale operation in Germany, a company called Tremet in Essen. It's on 120 pots. It has been operational since May 2019. Interesting to note, this was funded by the German government. 230 smelters in the world. Half of them are in China. So our relationship with Rio and NZAS has enabled us to develop technology to then take on the rest of the smelters to enable them to operate off a greater share of renewables, as we've seen we currently have just down the road. There you go.
3 minutes.
3 minutes short or 3 minutes in total? Wow, I could have kept going. Look at that. Thanks.
Ahi pai, ko David Simpson. I just wanted to firstly introduce the two companies that I am here representing, both up on the screen. T4 Group, which is a Southland-based initiative to, as Prue alluded to develop data centres that create regional facilities around the country with its core target product to be based out of Southland. It is owned predominantly by Southlanders, and we hope to see it as being a bit of a leader in a shift of the industry. It's an interesting play because one of the attractions Southland has is its cold climate. It becomes a feature, and obviously renewable energy. We're still flabbergasted as to why someone hasn't done it before, to be quite frank. Everybody seems to move in our industry, in the data centre industry, into Auckland. And we have come to the conclusion that the only reason they do that is because that's where the CEOs live, because there doesn't seem to be a commercial reason for it. The other company I'm here to also discuss today is a company called Carbon Group. And Carbon Group is a business that was born in originally 2019 as a concept, and then 2020 because we had to wait for New Zealand Green Investment Fund, as they were called, to actually arrive. And we are, who a representative is here of them as well, we are majority owned by New Zealand Green Investment. That is another business that, strangely enough, started out of Southland. Prue is going to ask us a question shortly about what people might not know. So far, I'm going to answer that right now. So far, 3 businesses that I've been involved with have been developed off a Southland second-hand dining room table. So I think, and all 3 of them are now growing into national businesses. So I think Southland can be quite proud that we can do stuff from down here without needing to have to live in the big cities. And I say that not being a Southlander though. I'm originally a Westie, and saw the light when my wife told me this is where I had to live. So I'll move on. I'm going to jump into one of the businesses now, and that business, T4, is the data centre business. I've alluded to the fact that we saw data centres as needing a better way. The prime driver for that was we started off looking at Southland as a region that could facilitate new income streams. Now, a lot of this has been talked about over the past little while around, obviously, the scare that possibly NZAS shutting down would give Southland. And some of these ideas have come from that. In this case, we're one of them, really. We started looking at how Southland what regions could Southland do with renewable energy and with creating new industry in Southland. Now, we are not a large employer. We are a small employer, but what we do is we create infrastructure that fosters innovation and employment in others. And that's what data centres are primarily there to do. We're there to create an infrastructure to enable businesses to use technology to innovate. And as innovation moves closer and closer to the edge, you need the data centres to follow suit. So that's the purpose of T4 Group and why it started. We then got to the point which I alluded to before of looking around the data centre industry and recognising that roughly in New Zealand 90% of all data centres capacity is in the North Island. Of that, about 90% of that is in Auckland, and about 90% of that is in Albany. I don't know what Albany has for attraction for all those people, but that seems to be the case, and it didn't sort of make a great resilience story, let alone economic sense to us. And so that's where we landed on a platform with a group of Southlanders to develop down here. We were thankful to a number of people in this room who helped steer that thought pattern. It was developed with the help of a number of community participants, and I say quite a few of them are here. And then with support of some local investment, we were able to get it off and going. We had to, the first steps we had to do was connect with the world, so we've actually had to become some of the bad guys for a bit, and we bought a data centre in Northland and one in Auckland. And that is to get us in touch with the customers, to enable us then to build what hopefully will become the preeminent one down here. Now, you've heard of the other story, the other company, DataGrid. They are also coming to town, and we work very closely with them. We support their initiatives. Their play is a much grander scale than ours, and we work very closely and see ourselves as partners in this journey. So that's it for now around T4. I will jump into a brief little description around carbon, because when I'm asking questions later, I'll jump between the two companies to answer them. Carbon, as I said before, is majority owned by New Zealand Green Investment Finance, who have been quite proactive in starting a lot of this stuff and funding. So if you need any money, he's in the room, go look for him. But we were quite thankful that we were very early on the journey with them. And it came out of a business that some colleagues of mine were trying to get going with regards to getting organisations in New Zealand attracted to more sustainable transport. Now, it doesn't sound like that long ago, but 2016 through to 2018, there wasn't a lot of conversations around electric vehicles being a serious contender, or hydrogen trucks, or alternate fuels. Very much 95% of the people we spoke to back then were, look, it's never going to happen, it's a bit of a pipe dream. And that's what developed the idea of, well, we need an organisation that can help accelerate that change, and that's what Carbon does. It brings the conversations into government departments, into corporates and organisations around the country around how they can actually accelerate that shift. And so we are a finance facilitator of that, and also an advisor on how organisations can do that. The other part that brings along with that is technology, hence why you might see my connection to both these businesses. Technology is going to be a big player in the shift to more sustainable practices, as it allows us to use things more differently to how we would have. In the car industry, there's stuff like the technology that Anthony's going to talk about shortly. There's technologies that's allowed us to start sharing cars quite easily. There's technology that has accelerated with regards to the ability to use batteries in cars and light commercials. I'm still struggling with batteries and heavy commercials being a possibility, but in light commercials. So it's been a big part of our journey, is understanding where that technology path is. So I will leave you there and pass over to Anthony for the next chat. Okay.
Thanks, Dave. Tēnā koutou katoa, or g'day, as you'd say in the West Island of New Zealand. As Prue said, I've been here for 18 months now, proudly call Southland home. And the entrepreneurial spirit is absolutely alive and well in Southland, and it just keeps permeating through. And HWR, one of the attractions for me about the role was that the one truck to the now 1,300 trucks that we operate across New Zealand and Australia. What I'm going to run you through is a presentation about, as it says there, tackling our CO2 challenge many ways. You've heard a lot about hydrogen, and I'll touch on it again today, but it's fair to say that we as an organisation have a bit of a carbon footprint that we need to tackle. And some might not know, but we are the second largest ready-mix provider, concrete ready-mix provider in the country through the Allied Concrete brand. So we have a pretty large emissions footprint that we can make a big difference for New Zealand as well. So I'm just going to run you through a bit of that detail. Some numbers on a page. I think everybody in this room should be proud of this story and embrace this story. You know, it's thanks to the increase in fuel price, our revenue's significantly grown. Peter Heenan, Director of Finance, is in the room. He will always say revenue is not a proxy for profitability, as will I, but it's an enormous business. It's the biggest business that I walk into many rooms and people ask me, who is HWR? A humble, and still today, a humble Southland-based business, one which is, we just sit below the radar and we just get stuff done, and we're very proud of that, but grown to a very significant business, as it says there, across 48 operational brands. 2,700 people, which we always say that without good people, and you heard Chris talk about ANZUS, without good people, we can't turn those assets into functioning operational bits of equipment. So all stemmed out of Inglewood Road here in Invercargill. Some of our brands, but one of the major projects that we've been working on, and we've been working on this for about 2.5 years now, and the major decision was made around March last year, where we made a decision to buy an electrolyser and install a hydrogen facility in Gore, a 1.1 megawatt system. But coupled with that, we have the beauty of owning a large fuelling network business through our Allied Petroleum business, but we also have, as I said, 1,300 trucks. So we sit on both that supply and demand side, but we also have an engineering, repair and maintenance business called Transport Repairs, which we're able to affect the conversion of trucks to dual fuel. Our Allied Petroleum business, 120 fuel points across the country. We also have a fuel petroleum business across in Australia with a similar footprint. We sell directly 1.1 billion litres of diesel, and we transport around 4 billion litres of fuel. So fair to say we move a bit of carbon around. So our hydrogen, we committed to 15 billion. Some people would, 15 million, not billion, Pete. Sit down, it's okay. We committed to a project of $15 million, and that encompasses the 10 trucks and also the refuelling point up at Gore. Where are we up to? We would have liked to have been today producing hydrogen up in Gore. There's something called supply chain challenges, which everyone keeps talking about. We have been hit by those, but it's only on one component. Every other component is either in country or it's on its way to us, and that one component is a compressor. So if there's anybody in the room who can give me a compressor, we could be up and running very quickly. So the electrolyser, as it says there, arrived in country. It's up in Christchurch, undergoing its final commissioning processes and getting certification. So we're well on the way. We've got our consents, so we're well on the way. And our new plan, as it says there, is that we'll be up and running in September, which will be pretty momentous to be able to fill a truck in 5 minutes at 350 bar. So something we're pretty proud of. Remiss of me to say, we also got our first dual fuel truck on the road in March, and some may have seen the media around that, but abating up to 40% of our emissions in a dual fuel hybrid truck. What will the fuel point look like? They're modular systems. The production systems there you can see on the left, which are the light blue. The problematic compressor is the dark blue. So again, anybody in the room who knows where to get a compressor from. But then you'll see, for some, this will look familiar because that is our existing Gore fuel canopy. Currently where this is due to be located is our truck wash, which is being relocated. We've done a bit of work to look at how we would actually set up this network in the future, and running off a hub and spoke model. So no, there won't be electrolysers on every corner. We will have, much like the production facilities today, we'll have centralised production and then remote distribution. And we'll utilise our Allied Petroleum existing footprint to get that to our commercial and retail customers. What does a truck look like? That is the same truck. For the record, my comms team were not happy with my artwork here, but anyway, I think it shows a purpose. I was trying to get it on a small amount of slides, but this is the same truck. So what you're seeing there is the actual dual fuel truck. Looks like a normal diesel truck. For those who know anything about trucks in the room, there's no payload degradation whatsoever on this truck. So it's maintained its high productivity vehicle status, 58 tonne that we can cart behind it. So these are modular pin trucks, so we're actually able to put the tank on it. So as I said, it's the exact same truck. We've just got a milk tank. No, it's not a hydrogen tank that's sitting on there. Some people ask that question, is that carrying hydrogen? No. As you can see in that bottom left, that's what the tank rack looks like just in behind the cab. And then we've put a curtain cider on it as well. The dual fuel kit looks like that bottom right image. And it's as simple as that. We augment the inlet manifold, manufacture that in-house, and then the smarts are inside a computer. What does it look like and why dual fuel? Like any ecosystem, you've got to build out the network. And at the moment, there is no network. We're currently trucking via diesel, trucking hydrogen down into Southland out of Taranaki. So for us, not overly the right way to go. But where does it get to in the future once Gore's up online? One truck on dual fuel in that bottom left will avoid 70 tonnes of CO2, the equivalent of 15 cars removed off the road. And then if we get to a point where we've got 1,160 of our trucks converted, which our production line could do, we would take 17,700 cars off the road. So for us, it was a bit of a no-brainer. Commit our money to it, we can make a notable difference for the emissions profile. Whilst not being zero, we know that. We know this is not zero, but it makes a notable difference and it starts to build that supply and demand. How am I going for time, Prue?
1 minute.
Ooh. So we're going to skip the video. The video would have just showed you that it actually works, so we'll just go through it. My transport, one of the other things is a lot of transport carried around, and I'm speaking fast now, a lot of things that carried around New Zealand and even in Australia is around potentially in some routes 50% empty running, so dead capacity. My Transport, which is our innovation arm, who are also heading up our hydrogen project, are working on a software optimisation program which will drop 30% of the dead running Ks out of our transport fleets. It's already doing that. We know it's already doing that within certain parts of our business, but that alone will drop 50 tonne of carbon out per truck. That's what it looks like. Concrete, I'll just quickly touch on this. For those who are constructors in the room, concrete has a huge embodied carbon content. There is, for instance, a typical slab house slab has 35 cubes of concrete, 10 tonne of embodied carbon. We now have a product called Ecrete, which is utilising ground blast furnace slag and fly ash, mixes up to 60%, reducing that embodied carbon by 60%. Making a notable difference. And that's where the future is moving to. Some of our mixes can go higher than that, but we are trying to really tackle the carbon issue in our business across many, many platforms. So, thanks. And I think, sorry, just one thing to leave you with. What that looks like in terms of a vehicle is that reduction on those house slabs. If you use a 60% Ecrete, it's 1.2 Ford Rangers off the road.
Thanks, Anthony. You did very well to get through that in just over 10 minutes. Right, so we're going to get into some questions now because I always find that it's great to hear, have the context set for us, but actually having some questions that we can ask and start to see where these creative juices flow and how these people have ended up where they have on their decarbonisation journey is really important. Also really keen, as I said, for you to pitch in. If there are questions, don't wait till the end, please do. We'll manage that during the process. First thing I want to ask them, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but just to make sure that they're sorted and they've got their mics working, is tell me one thing that you can tell us that we might not know about yourself, so we can get to know you a little bit better, or something that you love to do outside of work. Keep it clean. David?
You stopped me by saying keep it clean.
Yeah.
I've told you before that I was going to get ahead of this question. I am a Westie. I'm a Westie at heart. I try and keep that. It is on.
Yep.
Okay. I try and keep that quiet down here, but it's to be fair, that nature of that heart hasn't been too different to the experience I've had living down here anyway now. So I think we assimilate quite well with West Auckland.
I have 3 little boys. What are they? 9, 10 and 12. I run engineering companies. I cannot weld. Every single one of my children can.
Most people will probably know this or potentially know this, so it's not a really good one. I have 4 kids. None of them can weld. But I was an exchange student to Colorado when I was in high school. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Excellent, thank you. Right, so we're here today to talk about clean energy and innovation, and I'm really interested in what the first step was for your company in recognising the potential opportunities that arise out of this. So rather than seeing as decarbonisation as a threat, and I'm very pleased from the last 2 days that there's no one sitting here talking about that. But what were the sort of first steps you took when you were integrating this into your business model? I'll throw to you first, Karina. Peter Heenan might have a different opinion to Anthony, but feel free, Peter, to give your view of how it evolved as well.
Sorry, me?
Yes, yep.
I think you've just got to be hungry for that opportunity. I know 8, 9 years ago we were involved with Callaghan Innovation on a hydrogen project. It was low pressure hydrogen. Excuse me. We made electrolyzers in-house. At the end of the day, we gave it a good stab. It was called HighLink. We went through that stage. It hadn't hit those TRL technology readiness levels that it needed to be, so we walked away from it. But just keeping your eyes open, being hungry for that opportunity, which is why we're all here today, and do not wait for policy, do not wait for downward pressure. Beautiful example of this with Richardson Group. We cannot afford to.
Great. Anthony, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's fail fast. We all know this, right? Like I'm sure it comes into your feeds and you read these sort of things, but my transport, and the way I describe it is it's our little innovation incubator. They sit outside. They're very different people to the ones who run our business. Our business is day to day. They are thinking about those 10-year, 15-year horizons. And it's probably fair to say, Peter, back me up, is most of the lead team sort of think, what are they working on? Like it just does their head in. But they are the reason for the success, because they saw that there was this opportunity to try something, fail fast in a safe environment. So it's beholden on all of us in these rooms to foster those environments, to fail fast and get up the curve quick.
So how long has My Transport actually been, as a business unit, because it's quite fascinating to see how big corporates use innovation and entrepreneurship to look at different business models. How long has My Transport actually been in operation?
2 years as a brand, Pete. But
Pete, do you just want to come up here?
yeah,
Another seat here.
So I'm just bouncing off Pete here. But 2 years as a brand. So we incorporated the brand 2 years ago in a standalone business.
Yep.
But it probably Genesis 3 years ago.
Right, great. Dave, have you got anything to add to that?
I suppose just to reiterate, the biggest step, especially even on the sustainable journey, is to just start. Just get moving and keep looking at how you can advance with your innovation. Each step will take you to another one.
Great. That leads on to a really good question around, I think it's a good question, a question around how you evaluate the impact that this sort of innovation is going to have on your bottom line and on your business performance. Because we've heard a lot of talk about getting everybody taking the jump, but there is going to be an impact on a short-term, hopefully not long-term, but a short-term impact on performance. And how do you weigh that up when you're looking at the way that you're running your business? Anthony? Peter?
So I've even been quoted in the media, and it was unfortunate, but an uncommercial leap into hydrogen, I think, was the only thing the journo took out of the interview they had with me, and that became the hook line. But look, it's not commercial for us at this point in time, and we know that. And what I do say to, I said it to Minister Woods yesterday, we could blow our balance sheet up if we wanted to go and chase all of this. We're not going to do that because we are prudent business leaders, but we know that we've got to start to lead. And so for us, it was a bit about what can we do safely, prudently, to learn, and what it spurned was just a whole bunch of other activity in behind it. And I think for us, we do take that position in the industry strongly. We can see even through the announcement of the funding to bridge the gap between diesel and hydrogen, that's going to go a long way to making it commercially viable. And so, look, I think it's not commercial. We know that. We went into it eyes wide open about that. But we can see a pathway to it being commercial. And things like oxygen, there's two parts to water. Yeah. Hydrogen just happens to be one of them. Oxygen's the other. So.
Yeah, and completely agree. And I think at some point you've got to not put as much, whilst it's got to make commercial sense, at some point someone's got to take that leap. And I think it was Chris before saying primary aluminium production equates to 3% of global emissions from the International Energy Agency. The majority of those are from the energy source. So if you can't take that, I mean, where does the value lie? The planet or the books? And I think sometimes you've just got to throw caution to the wind and get stuck in and give it a good stab.
But for no disrespect, a traditional engineering company out of Southland, that's a pretty big ask, right? To suddenly turn to something like this, which is, having worked with you for a wee while now, to go from, running a cash flow business to watching cash run out the door at a very fast pace.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why obviously you've got to look at that. How do you progress? Where does that funding come from? You look. Traditionally, we've been very shy. We're a very small company, and it's always been self-funded. For this opportunity, we get to look outside, obviously with Invest South, and we're progressing with that further as well. But back to my point, sometimes they don't always make that commercial sense. Whilst they do for the end user, for that startup deep tech company, someone's got to get their teeth stuck in and trying to make that change.
Yeah. David, anything to add?
We talk a lot when we're working with corporates around valuing all three Ps, the people, profit and planet. And you need to pull the three levers. Sometimes the profit might need to take a little dip to move a couple of the other levers forward. But as long as you plan it right, then you find that the economics tend to work back again in the long term. So just make sure you keep all three of them in mind.
Great. Awesome. That fits in really well with what we've been talking about. So capital and funding options was one of my questions. You've talked about, taking investment was a pretty hard decision for you, Karina. Yours is off balance sheet at the moment, and Dave, you've got external investment as well. So it's not traditional for Southland businesses to look externally for their capital. Any, lessons learned or?
Some stuff I can't say because I think they're still in the room. Lessons learned is sometimes there is a trade-off between seeking further investment. You feel like you're giving up some control, but quite often you will be advancing yourself at a lot faster rate. In both of the businesses that we talked about here, we've sought further investment. One being obviously with the government, with New Zealand Green Investment, and the other one's been private organisations or closely held organisations, predominantly Southland based. And it's very important with that to make sure you also get partners, no matter who they are, that are on the journey with you. Don't get investors just for cash. Get partners, if you are looking that way, that want to come on the journey.
Challenges and barriers then that you've come up against in adopting and integrating these technologies. Anyone want to take that? There'll be plenty.
Yeah, it's and this has been touched on by others. The standards don't exist for what we're trying to do, so we're dragging regulatory bodies along with us, and they're saying we've got a process, just step in line the process, and we're saying, can you move it quicker, please? So they don't, the priorities don't necessarily align, and we get why, but I think how we can all get on that same for Team New Zealand, and I think you've only got to look across the ditch and see how quickly they're starting to run. So the opportunity is here for us now. Will it be in the future if we bind ourselves back to certain things? So seize now, seize while we can. And scepticism, to be honest, is probably the other one. What are you trying to do this for? But look, I think we've probably proven a lot of those naysayers at the moment, and the industry, in regards to the dual fuel, the industry has bowled us over with, that is just an awesome way to start to decarbonise.
Great.
Yeah, and in regards to import, our greatest challenge undoubtedly is that paradigm shift in the way smelters are viewed. For 130 years they've required constant energy, and all the power purchase agreements are structured for that, with absolute respect. So I guess for us the greatest challenge is getting that confidence out there in our technology. We know it does what it says it does on the box. It's been in operation for since 2019 in Germany, and they've rolled out additional trials, and we know that Europe is facing a very tough energy crisis at the moment. We do know that smelter has shut off 2 of their pot lines and kept 1 going. So the stakeholders that we're working with is obviously energy, aluminium and government, and every single smelter around the world has a completely different play into what that looks like. So yeah, definitely that there is our biggest challenge to get that across the line, that they can flex and that they are assets, and that they need to be realised as these great assets that can flex back energy into the grid, and be financially rewarded for that. And that is absolutely critical to what we are doing to enable our technology to make those changes and potentially reduce the 3% down to 2% worldwide.
Great. Do you have anything to add, Dave, or carry on with the questions? What is it about operating your business here? Why Southland? What makes it work here, apart from the fact that you don't live here, Karina?
That's very easy for me, because all the critical components are being manufactured in Southland. So whilst we spend half our lives on planes visiting smelters all around the world, we are engaging heavily with China. Half the world's smelter in China. We all understand the complexities of dealing with that one. So we have to be really careful. So to know that, and I won't go into the business model, but to know that the critical components which the IP is attached to will be manufactured in New Zealand, creating a whole different revenue stream for Southland. It's a no-brainer.
For us, it was a no-brainer as well when we decided we grew, especially with T4, out of Southland. So it was about encouraging Southland to grow further as a region. It's got a huge amount of positives, and for us the bonus positive being the weather is perfect for our industry. So there's always positive, there's always gold at the end of the rainbow.
I had no say in the matter. No, but I think just to really call it out though, it is our heartland, it is where HWR was born. It will always be our heartland, and I think you've only got to look at Invercargill CBD and see the commitment the family have to giving back to Southland.
Yeah, great. So I think Amy spoke about in the last session, the importance of ease of doing business in a regulatory and infrastructure perspective. What do you need, or what do you think the region's businesses need to be able to maximise these decarbonisation opportunities? If anything, everything might be just going tickety-boo.
Yeah, we're doing all right from a regional perspective. We've found that council's been very supportive, most of the agencies. One of the beauties Southland does have, though, is it's pretty easy to reach out. Most of us are 1 degree of separation down here, so reach out to those community organisations because they really do help. The Chamber, Invest South, Coin South being the new one, all those organisations, Great South, reach out to them. They will help you on this journey.
What do we need from Southland? I think there is a bit of a misperception that HWR is doing this all for their own trucks. We are not. This is something that we're trying to build for the bigger, broader, wider community. So please, if you want to know more about our project, and we have had plenty of people coming inbound on that, and we're going to need partnerships. Like, as I said, you heard me say that we could blow our balance sheet up. We could. We would just run out of money, and it's just not going to happen. And there's a gentleman sitting in this room that reminds me of that every day. He's my yin to my yang type sort of thing. You know, how do we get that partnership to run harder and faster into some of these things which have real commercial challenges, but there are people in this room that can actually get these projects off the ground quicker. And it's that collaboration, it's the partnerships up and down the country, not only just Southland. Southland's been amazing. Like, we got that consent, you know, we've got our resource consent and building consent, you know, very quickly through Gore, through good engagement. So, you know, we can't ask for more in regards to from Southland, but the partnerships of how we make it go bigger and faster is really for us. And we're starting to turn our minds to that, because we can now see that it's real, we're touching and feeling it and seeing it, and the confidence is growing on our side as well. So, yeah, partnerships, I guess.
So I think from a regional perspective, we often have a lot of people coming to the region with these great ideas, and then we say, but what can we do to help? So that's what I'm really interested in. What's the call to action to Southlanders to, apart from working together effectively with a regional leadership hat on, you know, what's that call to action? So before we open it up to the crowd who are anxious to ask lots of questions, my one question for you is, you know, what's your vision? Number one question. Number two, have you got 3 takeaways for businesses about how they can engage in this decarbonisation process and see it as an opportunity rather than a threat?
You've already stolen mine, Prue. I'm very simple. Time, team, technology, every single day, and we sit there and we ask ourselves, what else could we possibly give our baby to ensure every opportunity of success? You know, timing, we are bang on. Hydrogen's been around for many, 100 years. It's hydrogen's time. We're living in the age of aluminium. They can become great assets to the grid. It's aluminium's time. The team, absolutely critical, and the technology, hey, look, if you're not hitting those milestones and you've got to just process it through with your TRLs or wherever you're at, you're off. So bring it, getting the, you know, cutting the fat, time, team, technology is my one takeaway.
Yeah, as a takeaway, I would, on a similar theme, plan with good partners and good support, find who those people are and get them around you. I talked about before the ones that are down here, but wherever you are. Stakeholder engagement. We find it a lot in our business, especially with both businesses actually. With carbon, that's a lot of our journey with organisations, is finding those people who are going to be the change masters for you, get them engaged, get them involved in the project. And then the third one is execution. Just take steps. Take them now. Take one first step, because it'll lead to another one.
So let's just get things done. Yeah.
Yeah, at HWR we say just get shit done. I didn't say that. But be brave and be bold. It's those little steps that you take, one after the other, that make the biggest difference. If you don't start, you never will.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Questions from the floor? Before I have to pick on somebody, is there anybody who's going to start us off? Neil?
Wasn't I, Prue?
What did you say? What did you say? No, I can still see you.
Anthony, just interested, I saw the map of New Zealand going big, bold, I suppose, hydrogen for the future. Interested in whether other companies you're looking for support, or is that a pathway you're taking alone, or want to collaborate? Probably put you on the spot, given some other hats I've got.
No, look, I think hopefully I gave a flavour that, you know, we could, as I said, use the term blow our balance sheet up, but that means run out of cash. we need, it's, if we want to get there over a certain time frame, look, we could do that, and I could put any time frame on that, an unrealistic one or a realistic one. If we realistically did it, it's going to take a lot longer. If we realistically did it by ourselves, it's going to take a lot longer than if we did it in partnership with someone else. So we have had discussions with the likes of Heringa and so on. So because ultimately it's going to take the build out to create the demand. So there's no point if all South Island's done and North Island isn't, because there tends to be a bit of a population imbalance. But so for us, there are those conversations on a commercial basis that should be entered into.
Eric.
Yeah, congratulations, Anthony, on the work that HWR is doing on, leading a new trend in the transport world and the cost that you're putting into it. I've got two questions. The first one is, futuristically, is dual fuel the best we can do, or is there a straight internal combustion engine with hydrogen or an electric cell for heavy traffic? And the second question is, given there are more tractors in Southland than trucks, how far away is the technology for that?
Good questions. So we see dual fuel as a transitionary step. We don't see it as the end step, for the record, because the likes of Cummins and so on are working on internal combustion hydrogen engines. So I won't make a bet as to where it's going to finally fall, because I don't have that good a crystal ball, but FCEVs today is real. So as you build out that network and you get away from the range anxiety that exists within a fuel cell truck. So the beauty of dual fuel is we can run on 100% diesel. So we can send it out of here, it can run out of hydrogen, and it can flick over to 100% diesel and keep running. Fuel cell doesn't have that beauty. So if you were to ask me what one now, it's the real workable technology is fuel cell. So we're seeing that will become proliferated, but the amount of rare earth that goes into one of those is still significant. It's like an EV. So if you get, we also are watching very closely the Cummins project. If they get that, we believe that will happen, because it's cast aluminium, right, that goes into it. It's nothing more. We're pretty smart as humans. We got to a point where the internal combustion is pretty well refined and doesn't have a huge amount of rare earth materials and so on in it. So your second question was tractors. They are here and now. So the beauty of dual fuel is any diesel combustion engine can be retrofit to have it. So that can be generators, that can be whatever is powered by diesel today can be converted into dual fuel.
And there's a gentleman in Central Otago called Mike Casey who is converting a cherry orchard and has his first tractor which has been converted, and is worth following as well in terms of his journey. Any other questions?
Yeah, just I guess maybe less of a question. Just I thought it'd be good to highlight when Karina talked about the technology that came through Mark Taylor, and you see it around the world and exporting and all that kind of stuff. Just highlighting how great of a story that is, and even though maybe the Highling didn't turn out, that there is a network of that exists within New Zealand that helps to tackle technical challenges. It's called the New Zealand Product Accelerator, and it includes all the universities, CRIs, and so just highlighting that if a company has an idea or technical challenge that they want to solve, that they can come to this group and they find the best team and to help solve technical challenges. I think it's a good example, like you talked about, how different institutions can work together, whether it's national or regional. That ecosystem also exists. So just highlighting that, and yeah, that was a great story and a good example of that. So.
It's a really good point. Thank you for bringing it up, because we, in Southland, we're really good at coming up with ideas, really good at tinkering, and particularly on farm and out of Tiwai and Fonterra and some of our big industries, but we don't necessarily know who to go and talk to in terms of that technical stretch. So, reach out to Coin South in particular, who can help you connect in, and into Callaghan and some of these other accelerators. Absolutely, 100%.
And just on that, in regards to the aluminium space, it was astounding for me. The aluminium world's small, 230 smelters, half of them are in China, all state-owned, and then you've got a handful of big corps. and you would be hard pressed to find anyone in the top execs of those teams that haven't got some connection with Auckland University and Light Metals Research Centre. They are world renowned, and I think I thought that was fascinating. And again, we don't talk about it, we don't know about it, and this was my place to let everybody know about it.
Kia ora. Anthony, it's Dave Binney here from Te Arapaki. We were privileged enough to give you some hydrogen for your first truck, so good to see that. But unfortunately, we had to take it in a tank, across the ferry, all the way down here. So it kind of shows you some of the challenges we've got. Do you have a view of what the key things we could do to unblock the rapid rollout of refueling infrastructure in the country? I mean, you must have a view of that, right? Because both of us as organisations have put significant cash into the first movers. What's your thoughts to the system, the government, the stakeholders, of how we move that quicker?
Yeah, it's a good question, Dave, and nice to finally see you face to face. Dave and I have traded LinkedIn messages. And thank you for the hydrogen too, mate. Because without that, the truck would have just been a diesel truck with a pretty dual fuel ring in it. It's interesting when you do the analysis of some of those numbers I put up there. If you did a quick calc of a back rebate of the clean car rebate, the 6K, and yes, it's coming back down, but if you did that and you calculated that on the emissions abated 5 tonne for a car or 4.6 for a car versus a 70 on a dual fuel, if you threw that to production only, you'd pretty quickly get a fuel network around the country. Now, there's then a further question of can you get the supply of the critical components into the country, and we had some good discussions with the Minister yesterday about that, and I think there's a real opportunity for some in-country production, engineering production of those critical components, because that is the other thing. Everyone's running at the same pace, and there is some significant incentives and structuring programs running around the world, and the US and Oz I touched on. They're just sucking up all these critical components for the electrolysers. So we've got 2 electrolysers, but no good if you can't compress the hydrogen, right? So, look, I think there is, and really where it comes down to is where do we want to put our efforts, where do we want to put our dollars into to incentivise that change? And yeah, look, we've used all of our cash at the moment. It'll quickly, as you, Dave, know, it quickly gets to a point where you've got to say, okay, let's get a bit more customer base to pay for this.
Yep. Any more questions? Otherwise, we'll draw this to a close and move on. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Please, if you are talking to businesses, remind them that there are places that they can come to have support in terms of starting on that journey. We're doing some work with an engineering cluster that you might have heard a little bit about yesterday between Chamber and Coin, and excited to start working with more Southland companies so that this is, not the exception, it's more the rule. So thank you.